So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself.
Well, that consciousness of equipollence that we were talking about and that we have touched on through these recent years would really be the background for today and for everything that we are doing today. It's the grid through which we look today in the 7,000-year period. And as we consider the D, you see, in that whole flow, say, in mind, going from science itself to divine science, to absolute Christian science, to Christian science, right to the absolute point of having dealt with that claim of an opposite to such a profound degree that it can only be seen as a nothingness, as a complete resolution back into the oneness of being. This is what love wants to do in the 7,000-year period. And so it gives us a new interpretation, a right interpretation of that phenomenon that looks like a counterfeit, looks like an opposite. So when you and I have this complete descent of the synonym to every plane of consciousness within ourselves, we really experience in the D a statement that I am not mortal mind. Can't you see what I am? You see that mind would say, can't you see what I am? Can't you see that I'm not mortal mind? I'm not ignorance. I'm not darkness. There is no animal magnetism. And we'll feel that as we go through that whole flow, that when we reach the D, it's really a statement of the complete non-existence of anything but that one mind saying throughout the whole universe, I am mind. It's a perfect balance of statement. So nothing ever comes in as a reality except the one mind in that whole presentation of the design of being. So we go back up to science itself now, and we said that we have that concession going on there. The fact that there are ideas, that we're looking at ideas from a level according to which ideas do not appear as a focus, but it's a concession made by the other two categories to the seven. So we had a whole group, a whole cluster of ideas appearing on that level as we went through our training in the dimensional structuring of the synonymous term mind. And now we're going to ask of that field, to ask of those ideas, which of those ideas is bringing out something about the Word? Which ideas or idea is bringing out something about the Christ that has the touch of the Christ, the tonality of the Christ in it? Which is saying something about Christianity, and which say something from the standpoint of science? And this is a delicate weighing and fine tuning within the individual consciousness to feel this. We may not feel in complete agreement with everything that we have as our results today. We may not say, oh yeah, I can agree with that. But I offer it to you as our working hypothesis and ask you to work with it, not to criticize it, but to work with it, to critique it according to your more and more refined understanding of science and the categories that we have been talking about today. So weigh it for yourself, and we are scientists, and as we go we will see that those changes and refinements will come in that are right. When they're right, they stick. When they're not right, they fall away. Let's not see it as anything personal, somebody's personal findings. Our authority is in the system. So we're going to begin now and start with the 4 on the level of science itself, taking mind and mind's ideas. Is everybody with me? Okay, you have your materials in front of you. So we begin with mind and mind's ideas as we understand those ideas on the level of science itself, telling us really what mind is as itself. Not in relationship, just repeat it again, you'll hear me repeating the main points about each level. It's not mind in any kind of a relationship. It's where we see that we are looking at the synonym itself, including its own infinite idea of itself. Not, you hear the not, it's not this. This is the equipollence. You see that equipollence comes into teaching. It adapts itself as a teaching tool. It says that we're not considering now mind and its idea or its sphere of expression, not in relationship to individual ideas, and not really in relationship to the correction and the dealing with the suppositional opposite, the counterfeits of those ideas. So what is it? And you see that if we just look at that whole field of ideas as such, it's a very small field. And I'll just read those ideas to you. We have there, on the level of science itself, the all mind, intelligence, power, first, the one mind, force, divine will, primordial or primeval conception, basis, etc. That's the gist of it. So we have just a small group of ideas to work with. Actually, when we come to some of the further synonymous terms, we'll find that group of ideas is very, very small, very small. Sometimes only 4, 5, 6 ideas. So we need to ask the question, when we are qualifying now everything through the fourfold calculus, we need to ask the question from the standpoint of the word that is the right question, and coming out from the standpoint of the word, which we said has to do with what? With mind declaring itself. Now here on the level of science itself, it will be something about mind declaring itself as what it itself is, right? Yeah. We see that mind in the word is that which certainly is showing us that mind is the first. It's the first. Now this sense of the first, you can hear your whole structured consciousness, structured in the design of being now, will tell you that this is not what it is not. The first in a sequential order. It does not mean first in a sequential order. That would be another level, wouldn't it? It would be a further level. Can you all hear that? Yeah. It would be a level that is adapted to an unfolding order. Now, what level is that, by the way? Christian Science, yes. It's therefore mind not first in a chronological order, although she will speak in the textbook about mind as being first chronologically. She gives several instances really in which mind is first, and how it is first, and that it is foremost, it should be foremost, and so forth. That's not what we have here. You see, to make mind foremost means that we put it first. We do something in our attitude that gives mind the primary place value in an order. But what we have here is the fact that mind is first in principle. First in principle. In principio is the Latin. It reminds one very much of what we have in Genesis 1:1, that in the beginning, God. And that terminology, in the beginning, is very much this in principio, in principle, fundamentally mind. Fundamentally mind. That mind is the basis of everything. Mind says, I am the basis of everything. To be at the bottom of everything, it's first per se. We say in everything we really draw a conclusion there. But what we really have here is that mind per se is first. It is the fundamental thing, the basis of everything. And that marvelous statement that Mrs. Eddy makes about the basis of mind, and that about broadening and rising higher and higher from a boundless basis. It's a paradox, it's a paradox, because you broaden, how do you broaden and rise higher and higher from a boundless basis? That basis is everywhere. It's everywhere. It isn't down below. We speak about mind being at the bottom of everything, or at the root of everything, or at the beginning of everything. But that basis which mind is means that mind is basis per se, that being itself is that basis. Well, it's consciousness, and we train that consciousness by doing exactly what we are doing. It's telling us something, therefore, about being itself from the standpoint of mind, that we're only looking at the thing itself, at mind itself. We said it's very much as the Bible begins, that when the Bible says, in the beginning God, we see that in the beginning has no time. It's not a time-wise beginning. It's a timeless beginning. Mrs. Eddy says it means that the only thing there is, you see, that God is the only thing that there is in principle. In principle, God, mind, you see, fundamentally mind. Does that make sense? Yeah. The onlyness of everything is mind. So you see that you have to give the right accentuation, and that again, meaning is relational. So when we come to further levels, such as the level that describes a right attitude, then it will be to put mind first, right? That's our attitude. That's something quite different. And it's telling you something about the attitude within you, an attitude that reflects mind. Your attitude toward mind that reflects mind, you see, that mind which is first, which is fundamentally the only thing, which is the basis of everything. How does that reflect in my right response? That I would put mind first. turn away from the human mind, from the mortal mind, and start with the divine mind in my reasoning, in my thinking. So you see that meaning is relational. And you can have a term, the very same term, a term like first, and it can have just a world of difference depending on what level it is on. And here we feel that this sense of first in science itself is something very primal in being. It's very much a word sense, that sense of being the basis of that primordial conception, that primeval conception. So we have that wonderful term there, primordial conception. That mind is that which conceives. That which conceives. It's a conception that is outside of time. It has nothing to do with time. It's before time, if you want to say. Just the fact that mind is that which conceives and conceives eternally. Mind is infinite light. You see that conception is the light of mind. And mind is intelligence. So the infinite light is the intelligence of mind. It isn't light as we know it as something having to do with electricity or the expressing of something materially. It's immaterial. We'll see it as spiritual light. And the light of mind is the intelligence of mind. Later, too, we'll see how that intelligence can translate itself, that it will make a descent, that it has a descent through the levels, and you will find that the infinite translatability of that intelligence of mind as it comes and will do something for the human. It will direct us, it will lead us, it will guide us and steer us and so forth. But that is not appearing here on the level of science itself. It's only when we ask a different question about mind, namely, how does mind come to me? You see, how does mind come to the human is something quite different. And here we see that the very inner, innate nature of mind at the point of the word is to be intelligence. Then we come to the Christ, and we ask of that field of ideas now, all the remaining ideas, those that remain now that we have seen which ones are describing or saying something from the standpoint of the word, which of those remaining ideas tell us something about the Christ, that have a Christ sense within them or about them. And remember that the Christ is always going to show us something about its operation. It will give us an operational feel, an operational sense. Actually, it will say something about the operation of that which we have seen in the Word. And so now we have to adapt the tonality, adapt our tonality to that level of science itself, and ask this question from the standpoint of the Christ. This is not easy. It's not easy. I mean, it's not easy to an untrained consciousness. The more trained we are, the more groomed we are in the categories, the easier it seems to be, because it's that coincidence of our own consciousness, you see, having been formed by the categories with their tonalities, that when we have that consciousness of the oneness of being one with those categories, then we are able to read these ideas. So now we ask about the Christ, and the Christ within the fourfold calculus, we said, has to do with that operative sense. Actually, you see that the whole of the four constitute the operation of being. Let's just clarify that, that when we talk about the way being operates, we really refer to the whole of the calculus. But when we look into the Christ aspect of that calculus, we see that we get a finer, more definitive focus on the operation of being. The Christ has to do with that operative sense. And we'll talk a little bit more about that and qualify that when we come to the level of divine science. So the Christ within those four is accentuating the self-operative sense within those four. So we feel with these ideas that mind on the level of science itself is all to do with the divine will. The divine will. Did I make that clear, that from the standpoint of the Christ, on the level of science itself, that those ideas now which are expressing the Christ sense are the following. The divine will, you see, the will to express itself. Can you hear that? So you feel that within mind there is a movement toward action, toward doing something, a great intention. This is the will of mind, the fact that mind has an idea, that it wants to express itself, that it can't be deprived really of that expression. We can qualify that in all kinds of ways to ourselves, but fundamentally it's the divine will, so that which mind is in the Word, the Christ takes that and says, I express that. I bring that to manifestation. So we have those terms, a divine will, that mind within itself is the divine will. It is its own inner innate will for expression. To be, you see, to be what it is, to actively be that which it is. This is the relationship between the Word and the Christ. It is power. Mind is power. Can you hear that that's all to do with the Christ? That the Christ is a power sense, and we will trace that right straight through the design of being. As we go through that vertical of the Christ, you will see how that power is transformed and transformed at every level to appear in a certain form that is adapted to the situation. So without the power of mind, there's no expression. That power being the ability to express itself. That's what power means, the ability to express itself, to show itself forth as what it is. That's science itself. So we have those two terms, power and force, and again, not as in relationship to its idea, but as the innate nature of mind on the level of science itself at the point of the Christ. What is mind now as itself as Christianity? Well, you can see that mind is the all mind. Can you hear that? It is the all mind. Mind is all. This is always the office of Christianity, to show the sphere, the realm of the expression of the Word and the Christ, and the full expression of that primordial conception, that infinite intelligence expressing itself with power, has an outcome. What is that outcome as Christianity? The output of that if we think of the Word as the input and the Christ as the processing, so to say, as just a little bit of a help for our tonality, we would see that Christianity has always to do then with the output. And when we come to science, science will show us something about the feedback within the whole operation of the calculus 4. And so the output now of the Word and the Christ, as we ask, what is mind as itself, you see, is that it is the all mind. Mind is all, you see. So there's no other basis, no other intent, no other will or power. Mind is all. And then science, on that level, gathers everything up into one. It gathers up the Word, the Christ, and Christianity, and says, what is that? What is that? How do I define mind as itself when all of that is gathered into one stupendous standpoint of science? That's the one mind. So we have that idea of the one mind. There's only one mind. And we know that that means, and that the textbook would tell us that that means, that both noumenon and phenomenon is one. Noumenon and phenomenon in one, the one mind. So you see that really our highest idea, so to speak, is the one mind in all of those ideas, and that one mind holds within itself, contains within itself everything that is said about mind from the standpoint of the Word, the standpoint of the Christ, and the standpoint of Christianity on the level of science itself.